Right, so let's talk about how I do my grungy inking on these orc vehicles today. So I've got this guy all undercoated, and I've got a couple other models here that I needed to finish in, but the process is all the same. So at the end of the day, what we're going to do is I'm going to brush the wash on, the magic wash, and then I'm going to use just plain water through an airbrush to break up the evenness, because this wash does spread nice and even. We don't, well, I don't want that. I want it to really get in all the seams and around the rivets and everything. So the basis on this is the Pledge Future Floor Wash. This stuff, it's like $6 for this bottle, and I'm probably never going to go through it. So it's definitely worth the investment. But this bottle's pretty huge, so I've repackaged it. Something a little smaller, a little easier to use. Now, for really grungy like this, I like to do a 50-50 wash between this and whatever the wash is that I'm using. And what I'm using on my orcs is I use the Vallejo Oiled Earth. I think it works really well. And I just eyeball this. If I was doing something more precision, I would definitely measure, but these are orc vehicles, so it's fine. Anything grungy, probably about 50-50 on that. So then what I'm going to do is, in the acrylic wash here, I'm going to use some of this Liquitex Flow Aid. Now, you can get Flow Aid in different brands, but this bottle was about $8, and there's a lot here. You could also use a little dish soap, but this is there's no dye in it, and it just I think it works a little better. I think it's a little better product. Of course, I have that packaged in something a little smaller too, just an old Vallejo bottle here. And it doesn't take much, just seriously a drop or two. What that's going to do for us with the brush is it's going to kind of slow down the dry time on the acrylic to give us a little more room to work here. So all that I'm going to do is I'm going to brush this stuff on actually pretty heavy. I'm just going to go through and do all this. I'll go ahead and I'll speed up the action here so that you don't have to watch me do all this brushing. Alright, now I've got this done. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my airbrush. I've already got it loaded with just some filtered water. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to airbrush the water on this and kind of blow back this wash and kind of restore some of this pure, well, I don't want to say pure red, but you can see that stuff moving around, and it blows it into the edges, and it kind of brings some of that color back. And depending on how heavy you put the wash on, especially if you use like a dark wash, like a black or something, you're really going to tint your colors down. Now, the other thing I would also recommend is just kind of give the whole piece just a wet wash, just to dampen it, because when this stuff sets up, it's pretty hard. You have to go at it pretty rough. And you can see how, don't be shy about flooding your areas here. Let that stuff run around. One thing I would say is try not to let it pool if you can help it. And the areas that have already started to stain a little bit, sorry, I got some shadow there. You know, I want to bring the red back a little. The other thing that adding more water to it is you notice when you brush it on, it'll tend to bubble up on you. It'll foam almost. And just kind of hitting that will knock all that down. Now, I forgot to do the inside there. And right there on the, I'm going to miss some spots with the brush, and that's fine. All I'm going to do, get this good and wet. I'll just mix up a little more. Brush it on those areas, and then repeat. And anywhere where I want that highlight to show, see, I've already run out of water. So I just Add a little more water. It's not a big deal. This is not a science by any means. I don't know if I'd even call it an art form. It's just pushing gunk around. And that's the trick. If you just want to knock the stuff into the edges. Now do be careful, because this floor wax stuff is sticky, so definitely do it over. So I've got just poster board down whenever I do any of this stuff. And then the other critical bit on this is you have to let it cure overnight. If it's dry to the touch, it ain't dry. It's going to take at least 12 hours to be done. That will really make sure that it gets all knocked down, and you'll be good to go for your next step. Now, the other thing that's a great benefit is when you do this wash, you've effectively sealed your base layer here. Now, I know I'm kind of washing that away a little, but you'll get a nice little acrylic crust on it. Then the other thing I'd want to caution you is I wouldn't do any other detailing before you do this wash. You want to build the washes when you do something like this, because this stuff goes on heavy. And I guarantee you, if you do some kind of cool highlighting or something, you're probably going to obscure it with this. But that's really it. It's not horribly exciting, and it's actually pretty cheap to do. I mean, geez, I can do it. It's not that hard. If I do this on everything, now I won't do the airbrushing on smaller pieces like this. It just really doesn't need it. Instead, I go with a little thinner wash, maybe a third wash to 2/3 of the floor wax. And again, I'll just brush that on, and it works pretty good. Now, you can airbrush this stuff on. The only bad news with that is, if you airbrush your mix on, you're going to kind of skin it dry to begin with, and it is a really big pain in the ass to do this airbrushing step if you want to do that. I used to do that, and then I used to use airbrush thinner, and while it worked, it was almost too caustic. I would feel it in the air afterwards. This way I'm just blowing some water around. It's not a big deal at all. So that's really it, and I hope to see everybody at OFCC.